We decided to launch Milky Tea Play with our own game. We had these characters that we hadn't been using for a while, and they became synonymous with Milky Tea. They became a little bit like our idents, you could say. And they would develop these characters a little bit like a modern day version of the young ones.
We had 4 characters that we'd created for illustration purposes. And I think once they'd been made, I think we realised that they had far more potential. The logical step was to make a game for them. One of the characters had roller skates, so I said, well, the obvious angle is to make a racing game.
Roller Rally is a side-scrolling platform racer which sees 4 little characters take on the challenge of Snake Pass. The Snake Pass is, to these skaters, the most challenging skating trail ever in the world. And so all 4 of the skaters want to be the champion of Snake Pass, and they're all racing to be the best.
We broke it down into the pre-production phase, which is where we kind of came up with the ideas and set our targets. Then there was the production element, creating all the assets for the game, getting the music sorted out, the voiceover and everything, and then the post-production is more kind of the publishing side. So once it's been released, there's the follow-up to it, making sure that it's going out to the right people, kind of tracking the facts and figures and kind of seeing what we can do differently in the future for future games, which is something we've learned quite a lot from.
I think most games designers will tell you that the artwork is the last thing that you do. The artwork, which in the past has been our strong point, was the thing that we had to worry about least. This was all about game design.
We had to come up with a lot of game design ideas. So we go through a prototype phase, and that basically involves getting the simplest objects you can find. This is just standing artwork, and we can use that to test gameplay mechanics, and we can lay down platforms, we can test how high characters can jump, how fast they move, and then it allows us to build on top of a very simple platform. Once we've got that in place, we can then make decisions regarding gameplay, what's the most fun gameplay mechanic we can do, and then once all that sort of thing is decided, we can then take it further. We can start introducing final artwork and final gameplay mechanics. It's quite an organic process.
If you're a programmer, you have to know 1 or more programming languages, and then you have to know the specific of the problem you're trying to solve. The physics had to be tweaked quite a lot in order to get the perfect jump and the perfect speed and the perfect gravity. Since it's a physics simulation, you have to tweak those values quite a bit, and that's a lot of balancing.
To get the game to run fast, there are many, many different things that we have to take care of. If textures are too big, that means that the game has to load more things in at once, and it doesn't like that, so we have to keep textures nice and small.
Previously, all our work's illustration, so all our textures have been quite high res. So for example, we create a texture in Photoshop and it'll be 4,000 pixels wide. If you can imagine that the texture sheet is really low resolution, which means if you get close up to it, you'll be able to see that it's quite blurred, which again is a challenge for the artist to make the textures still look good but keep them low enough resolution for the game to run fast.
For a game that's been produced over 3 months, it was a really well polished game. The artwork was fantastic. We actually used our 3D animation team to animate all the characters in game to give the game that kind of that toy element, that toy feeling.
With the game being low poly, we didn't really have much play with the eyes, facial features, it was just a blink. So a lot of the character was brought across in body movements. And for the skating game, it was just kept to simple moves. The only complex stuff were the tricks, stunts, and the celebration moves at the end.
I'll get the low poly model from the modeller. I'll have a look at the mesh, see if anything needs retopologizing. So like, if there's not enough geometry around, say, the elbow area, then I'm not going to be able to bend it when it won't deform correctly. And then it'll just be a process of building the skeleton and putting that inside the character.
Straight from the off, when you boot up the game, you want to basically make it really easy for them to get into the game straight away. When you're designing for especially mobile and tablet, you have to think about the areas that you have to interact with, so you can't have very small, delicate, detailed. What you do is you take the premise of the game and then you kind of think about associations with that game. The inspiration was roller boots, and if you look at the logo, the inner circle area is kind of like the middle of a roller boot, and then kind of extra elements added to that.
Having a map on the menu screen, that gives the player some context. When we're making lots and lots of levels, sometimes players can lose track of where they've come from, where they're going, but In the menu screen we have this big map, and so the player can follow their progress down the map, and then it gives them a little bit of context, so when they're playing the game and they see themselves in the mountain area, they can see they're quite close at the beginning, they've still got a long way to go. Then later on in the game, when they start to see the environment change, they can get an idea that they're then approaching the end.
Another feature of Roller Rally is we have a sophisticated analytics engine built into the game. That analytics engine allows us, when someone downloads the game, is to find out how they're playing, when they're playing, for how long they're playing, and that information is really, really crucial to us as game developers. It also allows us to detect where people are getting to in the game. So for instance, when we released Roller Rally, within a month, we actually found that people were completing the game quite easily. So we decided to basically, as a reward for that, is expand the game with a series of extra levels that were a lot longer, a lot more difficult as well.
We could address some of the issues which came up with the original release, so some players wanted the levels to be a little bit longer, so we made the new levels longer. We also knew that we could make them harder, because when we first make the game, the first levels have to be quite easy because it has to teach the player how to play the game. When we get onto the additional levels, we can go crazy because they're going to now start from a higher level of play.
The marketing plan for Roller Rally didn't go down the route of a traditional press campaign. As production rolled to a close, we realised that we possibly could get approved by the App Store in time for Christmas, because you have to be approved by Apple, which can take up to 3 weeks. Our game was approved by Apple on the 19th of December, US time, so we weren't really expecting to get much of a response at all. But it actually turned out really positively, and people like Kotaku and 148 Apps featured the game, and they had loads of praise for the characters and for the level design. And so the trailer that we made has got more than 34,000 views on YouTube, which was amazing. And then the game went on to get 5-star reviews.
We used a wide variety of different marketing materials, so everything from creating top trump style cards for each of the characters, spot the difference games, even creating a mini game in social media called Ico Disco's Christmas Jetpack, which was a little mini game that allowed us to basically try and get people involved in that world and enticed into that game world, and direct people from social media through to the App Store as well.
We also created a Roller Rally website, and that gave people the opportunity to see the video, download ringtones and wallpapers, because we just felt it was important to give people something for free. We released Roller Rally on Android back in February, and everything was fine until June, when one cracked copy of the game's APK appeared on the internet, which was shortly followed by more. It's been cracked everywhere now. Once it's been pirated, it's really difficult to stop it. I did try to stop it for a while, contacting all of the sites saying take that down, but as soon as it's out there, it's like a virus. It spreads really quickly. So after 2 days of trying to stop the piracy, I just realised that I had to kind of let it go and just be privately angry.
We actually tracked down where actually the game got pirated, and it was in Vietnam. And for us, we had to look at it from a business perspective, and we said, you know, the one great thing about the piracy side of things is people really liking the game, people are downloading it and playing it and interacting with it, especially in Asia at this moment in time. Those characters are getting in front of people, which is a really great thing.
I think it was largely a learning curve for us, and I think we were kind of willing to invest a lot of profit into it, and kind of from that we've actually learned quite a lot of what not to do next time. There's certain areas that were profitable, certain areas that weren't, but I think that's just been a great learning curve from us for the publishing side as well.
When we designed Roller Rally, one of the things we wanted to try and do is we wanted to try and test the marketplace in terms of kids who are playing games on tablets and phones, at the same time as look at also the casual gaming market and analyse that a little bit more. For us, it was probably a little bit too young in terms of its design approach for the casual gaming market. So we knew if we went back to that game again, we'd design it very, very differently. The final budget for Roller Rally was around £60,000. That's how much it cost Milky Tea. You know, for us, it was a little bit more expensive than we first envisioned, but there was a lot of learning on that project. We know now that we can produce games like this a little bit quicker, a lot more efficiently.